All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
First up on the agenda tonight is a report by Dr. Nielsen and the health coordinators on high ability learners.
Thank you, good evening. At this point in time, the health coordinators could not make it. When we moved the meeting from last week to this week, last week, they were good to go, but this week they all have plans, and I said, well, that's fine, I will cover it. So, they helped put this document together, and what it does is it shows a little bit of information about our high ability learner program.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Okay.
find the agenda.
I thought we were supposed to just read his email.
Yeah, I was.
There we go.
Okay.
Didn't go back. Go
I
back.
love that. Here, I'm gonna read that one.
Okay, and back to the high ability learners. As we look at identification for students, we start in 4th grade and we wait till halfway through the year with 4th grade. We do that so that we have enough data, so that we can start looking at where students are, and we utilize INSCAS and our teacher recommendations. So for 4th through 8th, we take the state assessment and utilize that and utilize the percentile and figure out where students are. When we look at grades 9 to 12, we again look at math, we look at ACT and teacher recommendations as well. If parents would request for us to look at a child, absolutely. We will go through their data, we will ask for teacher recommendations, and we will try to figure out where the child is and maybe where the child needs to go, or absolutely the child qualifies. So, we are looking at 85th percentile or higher on the norm reference test, or criterion reference test. So MAP or INSCAS, what we're looking at is an average of 85th percentile. So that means when I look across subjects of math, of reading, of language arts, of science, that I want to see kind of that average of the 85th. So I could have a test score that's maybe 82nd, but then everything else be up above the 85th. That brings me to that 85th. We do have some students that I know they work really, really hard in class, and their teachers are like, well, they should qualify. Well, you know what, I wish I could open this up for every single child, because I agree that what we do for our house students is what we should be doing for every single child in our district. And I would say that's probably one of the reasons why we have the best possible summer schools, because it is about that enrichment. It's about providing opportunities for kids to extend their learning. So, we do have a once in, always in, because we do not, if a child starts to drop on their assessment scores, we do not kick them out of HAL. If behavior becomes a problem, we do not kick them out of HAL, because I will tell you, with some of our high ability learners, there are also some of our students that maybe are in skills or at core. They are some of our brightest kids in our district, but they also struggle because of maybe attention pieces, because of things are just not as fast, or just not pushing, or as engaging for me, because I get it. So those are things that we work with too, and working with teachers on trying to find ways to continue to engage. Students that fall into that gifted, the 93rd percentile and above, we continue to work on those ways that we have to differentiate. We have to provide different options for our learners. So as we look at it currently, we have 208 students, and you can see the breakdown from class to class. So that is there, and we continue to monitor it. I will tell you, one of the things that I strive for is to have a few kids, because when we do elementary, we bring the kids together in the afternoons twice a month, and it's nice to have a group of kids. I don't want just 3 kids, it's very hard. I mean, I can work with 3 kids, but it's nice to have a few more, because then you start getting a group, you start getting the consensus building, you start getting the problem solving where they're all working together. So those are things that we try to look at, but this is where we currently are. On the back, you have information about what different activities, what different things we look at. So with our elementary, we do a lot of the project-based learning, career exploration, exploration of interest areas. They tend to work with the students and figure out what do they want to do, and a lot of it is focused around STEM. So Ozabot, Spiros, coding, escape rooms, connection to our 5th grade science, math curriculum. We tend to do a lot of that. Our kids will be heading to Thayer Central this month for the Quiz Bowl. And so that is always a fun adventure for them as well, because they prepare for the Quiz Bowl and they go and they participate. Some years we do very well. The next year we may not, but it's a great experience for the kids just to be put into that situation where they have to answer questions quickly. We do also take exploratory trips to the Henry Doorly Zoo, Omaha Symphony, Plum Creek Literacy Festival, or the Sac Museum, and those depend upon when they fall during the year as to whether we attend or not. We have the Plum Creek Literacy Festival always falls on the day after that Friday of the fall parent-teacher conferences, so that one has been a struggle to sometimes get kids to come to that one, so that one's been a hit or miss. But some of these other ones we tend to do quite frequently. As we look at the middle school, what they've done, and they have started a few things differently, but one of the other things I should mention is our elementary coordinators are Ryan Stevens from Paddock Lane, and then Beck Mayer and Brenda Hansel, not her maiden name, sorry, Brenda Hansel at Stoddard. So those are our 3 coordinators that work together, and they bring the kiddos from St. Joe, or from Paddock and Stoddard, and we also add in St. Joe's and St. Paul's kids as well to that mix. For our middle school coordinator is Jared Brand, and Jared Brand has, we switched mid-semester, one of our coordinators left, so we ended up, Brooklyn Stara, one of our middle school English teachers, is taking over the role on that. So she's quickly learning the ropes, but Jared has taken a hold and had some fun. They, at the beginning of the year, surveyed the students to figure out what the students wanted to do. They also do the Quiz Bowls, however, the Trailblazer Conference has a Quiz Bowl, so they add that to the mix. Not only do they have the Thayer Central option, but they also have the Trailblazer one. So that is fun. The other thing that they work with are BattleBots, building a smart mirror, art, music, wearables with connection to the 6th and 8th grade curriculum. The smart mirror is something that they are working on this year that is brand new. And so Jared is very excited about that part and has shown me different things. The computer programming that they are doing over at the middle school with the HAL program is unbelievable. So it's been fun to watch. It's been fun to see. But again, looking at different field trips of the UNL Planetarium, Plum Creek Literacy Festival are things we've done before. The high school is where the High Ability Learner Program becomes a little bit more complicated, because the life of a high schooler becomes a lot more complicated, as we know. So we work it through a different perspective. We work it through what courses are the students taking, what activities are the students involved in, what other things can that child be doing. And so that's where we work it through those avenues, because we try having meetings during mentors where we bring in all the house students. You have maybe 1 to 2 students that show up out of the whole group of the high school, which there's roughly around 130 students that are identified as HAL. You offer things, we've offered sessions after school. No kids can be there because they have sports, or they have they work, they have other extracurriculars that they are part of. And so that's the thing, is we really start working with the kids. Okay, we've got to, where are you heading to? Is ACT, SAT, how do we prepare you for that? How do we make sure that you're in those dual credit courses, those AP courses, to make sure that you're challenging yourself? Or what career pathway are you interested in? How do we get you into those dual enrollment areas? So I will tell you, Mr. Ankrum is our high school coordinator, and he works with Dr. Watts on making sure that esports competition, that our HAL students know that that is available, that we also look at academic decathlon, that we look at UNL math competitions, that we look at other things to get our students involved in as much as we possibly can. And I know that it is a challenge, because every time we talk, it's, well, how do I get the kids here, Jackie? I don't know. Because when they have lives that they don't have time to fit anything else into their schedule, it becomes difficult. So that's the thing, is we've continued to have questions about the high school part, and how do we continue to navigate that piece. that is an update about the Pell program.
Are the number of students just less because enrollment is less?
Yes and no. I also think, with the NSCAS, I do think, I mean, we do get a percentile from the assessment, but, I think that there are also students that maybe, are struggling a little bit more. I do think that I see a lot more of our students falling within that 60th to 80th percentile, is where I see a lot more of our students falling. And so when I look at kind of our trend, that is really where I see, and that could also be because the NSCAS has changed. So that could be a part of this puzzle, and those are things that we're continuing to look at, and that's why, again, if a teacher would recommend, or if a parent would come, I would look at also what are the other pieces too. If a teacher made a very strong recommendation that look at their GPA, look at their assessment scores, even though it may be, yeah, they may be 75th percentile on the NSCAS, Jackie, I really think they need to be here, okay, I'll work with, those are things that I would look at. So that is where I do think NSCAS could play a bit of a part in there, but again, we used to, when I first started, have another assessment that we would give students in grades 3 and 6 for identification purposes. And again, I don't know how many assessments you want to give kids. I would prefer to try and limit the assessments that we give kids, because I know our kids are assessed a lot. So that's where how much is too much. Was that assessment giving us what we needed? Was it not? Was it stressing kids out? Those are the things that I think we look at, but I do think the change in NSCAS maybe has a little bit to play into those numbers being lower, and that's why I will work with that teacher too if they come to me and provide a strong recommendation.
Well, you don't drop students once they're in. Do some self-deselect, and you have a kind of a number of who are active as opposed to officially in?
I would say with our 4th through 8th grade, when we get the 4th grade identified, those kids are all active. There may be 1 or 2 that drop off, but for the most part, those kids are all active. It really is, the high school is, they're there, they are identified, but they're active in everything else. And so that's the part, to say that they're active in a HAL program at the high school would not be, Yep. But usually it's 1 or 2 kids that we have that they have been identified, and they're still identified, they just are not participating. Yep.
Okay.
So it's not many, which is good. Yeah.
Other questions? I guess we're gonna do youth frontiers next with building administrators.
Just gonna say that. Could you run the video?
Yep.
Could you do that? And then if you have any questions, the 3 of us would be happy to answer, but we think the video says a lot, so.
Okay, I just need it.
Nothing can ever change the way I feel about you.
Sorry about that.
I promise I will stay
Be kind to me.
Get it taken down.
Evidently.
Oh, we have it on tape, too.
What do, I don't know how versed you are in what exactly these frontiers was, so the video's like, oh, that's cool, there's kids dancing around and things. Do you have an idea of kind of what it was? Okay. I for one was interested in how the freshmen would do with that, especially, you know, when they're kind of setting up and things, and, it was awesome. I think that I would say 97% of kids participated and like truly participated. I mean, to the point where they're locked in arms singing "Lean on Me," and things like that. A big piece that we thought was really beneficial was there was a lot of talk about respecting just yourself and self-talk and the positives about who you are, to build confidence and self-care, which I think is really important right now with our youth. Just with the messages they're seeing on social media and things like that, continuing to talk about yourself and the positives and building that capacity to do that, because then that translates into how you treat others. And the respect that you show for others can be reflected when you're comfortable with yourself. And so they broke into small groups and had these little activities that they did where they talked through things. Our leadership team of students led those. They were incredible. We have amazing leaders, and I think that was another really positive thing about this day was these freshmen were in these groups of 8 with these school leaders that they were then getting to know better and also seeing great leadership happen. And so overall, at the end, at the high school, they had a time where they kind of they lit a fake candle in the middle, and then students had time to write what they wanted to focus on a card, in terms of respecting their self, respecting others, like that, and then they had an opportunity to go up and share if they wanted to in front of everyone. And it was really interesting to kind of see that unfold, because when you're talking freshmen and a whole bunch of them sitting around, there was a lot of sharing. There was 30 minutes probably where kids were coming up, and times when kids had to stop because another one was coming up, and just sharing things like, I just want everyone to know how much it meant to me when this happened, and it seemed like everyone kept coming up to me and saying, are you okay? How are you doing? Those sort of things. That was really neat to see. I think it created an interesting and unique bonding experience for our freshmen that I hope that we're able to continue to build upon, and continue to talk about respect, and what that looks like. So that's kind of the piece from the high school. I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything from that?
I followed the other links, so really appreciated the respect, the kindness, and caring, those kinds of things. And it's very impressive to watch those things. And it's sustainability. What measures do you have, what resources do you have being able to sustain that kind of response?
Well, I think one would start with what's nice about Youth Frontiers is that you kind of provide you with some next steps, and different little pieces that you can continue to meet with kids, talk with kids, addressing those sort of things. I think what's been cool is we've had kids come up to us and say, hey, are you gonna keep doing this for the next classes that come in? We thought it was really beneficial. And so I think that's another piece we look at, because if you can get kind of waves of kids coming in, you know, kids that hit the middle school and then they come into the high school, and we just continue to talk about that. I think those are a couple ways that can go. And I think also checking back in. We had quite a few kids seek us out and tell us how much they liked that day. And I think continuing to talk to those kids about what would you like to see next? How can we continue to build off of that would be powerful as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would echo everything that Mr. Boyd just said, and I'll just share a little bit. First, I want to thank Christina Lyons for providing some grant opportunities to the district to get Youth Frontiers into our schools. So similar to what Philip had said, we had the middle school retreat, which is a courage retreat, and the next day we had the kindness retreat. So to show you the kind of what the kids' response was, the three individuals, and how they managed for the day to keep 150 kids engaged and that energetic, and it was amazing, honestly. They walked in the gym to get ready for the 5th grade retreat, and the kids just were going nuts. What's going on? They just saw them walk through the doorway, and they, gave them a standing ovation. We're clapping for them, and so they loved it. And they loved the three individuals that gave them a space that was safe amongst all of them. And Youth Front, the retreat organizers, the three teachers, made it a safe place for them. They broke down social barriers, and we're teaching them how to overcome fears and do the right thing in all situations. Have courage to try new things and meet new people and things like that. So it was good. Our kids enjoyed it. So I can't say anything negative about the experience. So I'd like to see if we can entertain the opportunity in the future. We have the means to do so.
Echo everything that was said, and thanks, Jason too, I think was the first one that said something, he had heard about it and brought it up, and Andrew had a little experience with it from some time ago. The 5th grade, that was great, and probably if there was any group we were a little bit more concerned about, it might have been the 5th grade. Will they accept all of this? And these are kids that don't necessarily know each other because they came from Stoddard and they came from Paddock Lane. So, it's about another 130, 40 kids. And how would they react? Well, didn't have anything to worry about. They just got into it right away. We shared bus, so the kids from Paddock came first, and they were in the gym, and the bus went to get the kids from Stoddard. And when we got back with the kids from Stoddard, the kids from Paddock Lane, they were singing and dancing and everything, and the kids from Stoddard just came right on in. And so it worked out great. A couple of things that really stick out with me was that kids that don't ordinarily hang with each other, like at recess or lunch, or maybe, one's into sports and the other one isn't. When they would say, go pair up with somebody you don't know or you don't hang with or whatever, they did a great job, and let me tell you, 10 and 11 years old, that's a big deal. You hang with your buddies, and you don't go find somebody you don't know. And they did, and all the activities they did, really, kids were talking to each other, other. Two things that I thought really stuck out to me. During one time, they had them all sit down, and once again, it's 140 5th graders. It's hard to tend to sit quietly, but they all sat while they were doing, I don't want to call them lectures, but they're little talk tos with them, and they all sat and they listened, and when they were called upon, can you give me an example of a time somebody wasn't kind to you? They participated, which once again, that age group isn't, big to just speak out in front of everybody. So they did a great job with that. The singing was marvelous, and we sang all the great songs that all of us old folks knew, so that was really great. So we could sing, we could sing along too, but the kids all sang along. They all sang along, and they did several activities like that where, they would divide the groups into 3, and this group was supposed to maybe be clapping, and this group was doing this, and this group was doing something else. And then they'd point, they'd be singing the song, and you're supposed to start, then you're supposed to start. And they really did a great job of harmonizing their music. That was great. And just one other thing I'd like to mention is I really appreciate how the staff got involved. We had our counselors there, and we had our fifth grade teachers there. Kevin and I were there along with, for Paddock Lane, we brought several paras along. We brought all of our fifth graders from Paddock Lane, regardless as to what program they might be involved in. Even if it, a variety, whatever our programs are, all the fifth graders from Paddock Lane came and all of them participated. So that was really awesome. That was totally awesome. An activity they did with the grown-ups was called the kindness train. I think I put a little blurb in there about that. But what was really cool about that is the teachers at the about behavior or getting their math done or whatever. And you say your name and you do this little dance and then you join the kindness train. That was really cool to watch that happen because that was a whole different way for teachers to interact with their students. So I joined the other two gentlemen in saying I certainly hope we can keep doing this because I really think it'll be great in a few years when kids have been through that 2 or 3 times, and by the time they get to high school, that will really be great. I also think it's a great way for us, for some of our fifth graders to start mingling with kids they didn't go, they might know them, but they don't go to school with them and don't have those kind of activities. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would just throw in 2 quick comments. Number one, I think what you heard tonight, and it's kind of a segue into the next section on district strategic plan, this all fits strategy number 2, which we'll talk about briefly. And the other thing that I think is key about, there's really two organizations that do these types of retreats for kids. The other one is called Challenge Day, and so we did talk about Challenge Day as well. You can look that up on the internet if you want to. But Youth Frontiers was more accessible and had more, it had more to offer a wider range of age levels than Challenge Day. So, and we were fortunate that Mr. Hickey and some of his previous experience had seen Youth Frontiers in action, so the recommendations we got were very positive. So it was a really, we are planning to do it for the next couple, 2 to 3 years, and we anticipate that it will be something that will really hopefully benefit the overall emotional learning that comes along with being in school as well.
Thank you. Now Dr. Nielsen and Mr. Alexander will talk about the district strategic plan.
Okay, so you're getting a handout that has an update about what, as a district, we are working on with the strategic plan. And one of the things that you saw first semester was you had presentations from our preschool, our elementary, our middle school, and high school. As a district, we also want to give you an update. And so then we will be back in May or June to talk about where we are. And so the nice thing about this is it continues to, we are trying to make more of a concerted effort to keep the strategic plan in front of us because we know if we do, it remains that live document. It remains a document that we go to that drives us, that is that. And so as you look at it, you have the 5 strategies and you have different things that we are continuing to look at. Strategy 1 is all about designing, developing, and implementing new and existing buildings and technology infrastructure.
We kind of talked about who's going to talk about each one of these, so we're winging it here a little bit, but strategy number 1 really revolves right now heavily into the PK5 building that we're constructing. We're also looking at, safety and security training and drills that we will have a policy on a little bit later, so I'm not going to overcook this. Just those are some of the things that we're working on and in relationship to strategy number 1. Designing, developing, and implementing new and existing buildings and technology infrastructure. There's a lot going on in this category right now. If you've been east of town, you can see that, and there's a lot of discussions taking place behind the scenes. And there's a lot of discussions, beyond just Beatrice Public Schools involved in these things too. So we'll talk about a policy a little bit later on that touches on one of these categories.
Strategy 2, incorporating social emotional learning into the regular operations of the school. We are looking at beginning So investigations where we look at what screeners do we need at the K-5 level, so that we can look at a social emotional screener. So we can figure out where our students are, where do they need to go, and I know Beth is working diligently on that piece to look at what do we need to adopt. And I know our counselors have been a strong part of that conversation, because I've had counselors and our school psychs also saying, okay, what's out there, what are we looking at, and so we are working on those pieces. Promoting staff wellness, we have to update our wellness plan this year, and we will continue to update that and bring that to the board for your approval, your blessing on that piece. And we have increased services to the EAP program with Beatrice Community Hospital. One of the things that we offer 2 different pieces, so our staff have access to the hospital for their own employee assistance program, but we also have staff have access for help with students in their classrooms. So we've added both components, and there are, if you look at our staff homepage, there are 2 forms. One is where it is about the student. That one comes to Beth and I, so we can make sure we are not duplicating services. That if they are not, if they're working with Dr. Lafferty with Nebraska Mental Health, we also don't have them working with Beatrice Community Hospital, because that would be a duplication. The other one that is for staff is completely anonymous and goes straight to the hospital. So there are 2 avenues there, and then we are continuing to find ways to increase participation in our EHA wellness program, which comes to us through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so it's our Educators Health Alliance program, and we do some great things throughout the year just to kind of try to keep going. Staff, last month, our challenge was Let It Go. So it was a challenge I found online from another one that talks about January, just letting it go and starting fresh. And so it was a fun challenge, and we had quite a few people participate. Strategy 3, recruiting, retaining, and developing high-quality staff, faculty, and administration.
So in strategy 3, it's all about, resources in staff, whether that mean finding staff to replace staff that are retiring or leaving, whether it means recruiting staff for classified positions, all of those things, putting professional development opportunities in front of staff to help grow them in their positions. Ultimately, in education, we talk a lot about growing the next leaders in staff and growing the next leaders in students. And so you can see there we talk about trying to recruit staff. We look at hiring fairs, we look at evaluating salary schedules, we look at all those things. Action Plan 2 revolves around mentors. We have mentors in place in each one of our buildings for our new staff. Action Plan 3, formative assessment training, deals with K-5 teachers receiving training to identify their priority standards. We've put a huge emphasis and a lot of resource and time into getting the game plan of priority standards identified in our K through 5, so we are teaching kids what they need to know to be successful on the assessments. And then PLC leader training, we've really worked on making our PLCs more robust through training the PLC leaders. And so we put a lot of resource into that as well. So that's strategy 3.
Strategy 4 talks about providing research-based instructional delivery strategies to meet each student's unique learning needs. One of the things that we have really been working on is developing a stronger CTE unit and a stronger commitment to Beatrice as a community in this. So we have developed a Career Tech Ed strategic plan, and we have an advisory group that met first semester. And we started it last year, but we met first semester, and we are continuing to work on those pieces. We're looking at how do we market, working closely with Engage, working closely with the chamber, and how do we continue to make sure that we get those connections that we need for those internships and get the students on that pathway. The other thing is we've also been having conversations with Doan. Doan has a new program called the EPIC Pathway. It's the Educator Pipeline Collaborative, and I will tell you it's something that is free for ESU 5 and 6 students for the next 2 years because of the grant that they have. And so it's been one of those things that we have sent out something just yesterday in the Orange Peel. We are going to make sure that we continue to talk to our high school students because it really is targeting our current, you could almost say our current freshmen, sophomores, and juniors probably more so. But if we have some top freshmen that are like, I'm going into education, I want to be a teacher, we're looking at that. But we also want to open it up for health and human services because there's some courses that would align with anyone in that health and human services career pathway. So we're looking at that. And again, the PLC data-driven discussion, this goes right back up with that formative assessment piece of really drilling down on where our students are. Our teachers spent a lot of time in January looking at the assessment results that we had from December with the NSCAS and figuring out what standards our students were meeting, what standards we weren't meeting, and what we still have left to teach. So what priority standards are still left to teach, and how do we assess it, how do we make sure that kids are meeting those before that March, April time when they have to take the NSCAS, so that they have all that information. And then strategy 5, develop and implement district-wide systems to enhance student learning. So as we look at this, we talked about the formative assessment training, we talked about PLC leader training, and then the Mentors You Matter program. And that Mentors You Matter program, we are actually piloting at the middle school and high school. It's a different mentor program than we have at the preschool and the elementary, because normally what we have done previously is said, okay, Janet, I'm going to be your mentor. You know, Jason's gonna be Doris's mentor. So, you know.
Who's yours?
Sorry.
Who's yours?
Jackie is
Yeah.
mine.
We'll
It's your
be
lucky night,
revisiting.
Doris, it's your lucky night.
So, it is, what we did though, is I may have a different experience based upon my teacher's knowledge, based upon, you know, some other things. So what we said is, you know what, let's have one person. Let's find one person at the high school, one person at the middle school that works with all of our new teachers. And so, because they also have the PLC group, they also have that collaborative team where they are working directly with content specialists. This is a person that's going to help make sure that their welfare, make sure that they're social emotional, make sure that they make it through especially January timeframe, make sure that we keep them lifted up so that they want to continue teaching. It is a way to continue to kind of hopefully retain, because we know that if we can build that strong connection with that first year teacher, it's very hard for them to leave us. So those are, that's one of the things that we're looking at, and we're continuing to evaluate it as we go. And Missy has been a strong piece in helping us get that off the ground and getting that developed, and it has been fun. And I have received quite a bit of a good response back from the teachers just saying, my mentor, this person checks in on me all the time. So it's been, and I will bring those two that are working with this back later on at the end of the year where we can recap and talk about some of the perceptual data that we have at that point in time. Any questions about the strategic plan at the district level? No, I know, does anybody else have something?
Okay, now we're zipping right along to policy updates.
Yeah. Okay.
So, in this portion, this topic, we want to make sure that we take a little time to talk about some things to bring everybody up to speed on. If you recall, this discussion really started in October, and in October, we started talking about some of the graduation requirements, and even previous to that, I'll even say even back into last year, we had discussions about graduation requirements. We know that we've had some legislative bills that have impacted our graduation requirements or will impact our graduation requirements, so we need to give you a bit of an update on that. And recognizing that we have new faces at the table, we wanted to try and bring everybody up to speed. So in terms of the graduation requirements, 5205, we have some things we need to go back and refresh everybody's mind on. And then we also need to talk about the computer science requirements that were mandated by state legislature last year, and the cleanup bill that's in the unicameral this year that addresses that. So
So 5205 talks about all of the graduation requirements that we currently have for students to meet in our district. Remember, we've talked about 260 credit hours is what we expect, which is a lot more than, most districts have 240, some have 250, but 260 is really at the top when we did a comparative study. One of the things that we've also talked about previously is that communications requirement. Do we keep it? Do we not keep it? And so we have chosen to keep it at this point in time, and we'll probably continue to keep it because we feel it's important. The other thing that we continue to evaluate is our NSCAS and ACT data, and where is that, are there some things that are missing? What opportunities do kids have? If I have 260 credit hours that are chosen, that means I have, out of that, we have 160 are defined by our requirements. So that means they have 100 credits, they have 20 courses that they get to choose on their own. That would really get them into their career pathway. So the legislature has added another piece, we know, the computer science. And as we look at it as it's currently written, it impacts our current 8th graders. So that means they have to have the 5-credit course before they can graduate in 26, 27. However, there is now an amendment. We have LB 520, which is now hold on, let's maybe pump the brakes a little bit and allow districts time to figure out how this is going to work. Because a lot of districts have said, we don't have extra staff. How are we going to teach this? How am I going to require all students to do this? I don't know how. And so again, remember, there are 3 different options that we are looking at. One would be where we look at our 8th grade course. It is a quarter, where we do a quarter in class with Mr. Hoagland, and he has a lot of STEM technology in there and would really meet the high school computer science requirements, because you have to. If we're gonna teach it in 8th grade, we still have to meet the standards that are required at that high school level. So our 8th graders would be doing it, and then the other quarter would be on their own. So it would be a in-person and online course. It would be kind of a hybrid course if we did it at the 8th grade. If we waited until high school, one of the things we looked at was, okay, high school, we have a couple options. High school, we could look at solely an online course, that it just becomes a requirement, because we want to make sure that every student is able to learn online before you leave our doors. So it's a requirement for everyone to take an online course. How do we manage that? We are still working through those things, because we know that that's going to be a piece that Mr. Voigt and Mr. Suter have expressed a little bit of concern with the schedule that we currently have with everyone filled. How do we manage those pieces? Who oversees that? The other thing is, do we do a high school in-person course and then pull something else off the registration books? So we no longer offer this because we're offering this. So those are some things that we have to look at. Or do we do a combination of all of it? And I think probably D is what we're looking at, is we'll offer an 8th grade course. We'll offer an online course for students that maybe enroll their sophomore year and enroll from out of state and don't have this requirement or haven't taken a course in computer science. We'll offer in-person courses that meet the requirements so that we have multiple options for students to meet this standard. So those are some things that we are looking at. We hope that the 520 comes to fruition, because then that gives us a little bit more time. That would then look at our 7th graders as where we probably would need to start. So we'd have at least another year to kind of help plan. However, we want to get this rolling, because if it is the 7th graders, we need to start it next year. So that's one of the things that we have looked at, both middle school and high school administration saying, okay, let's start moving so that we don't have to all of a sudden be running in July, because that's not fun.
Is anybody getting any indication that they believe that it will get out of committee?
Yes, I think there's a strong feeling that it will get out of committee. And essentially, all the bill does, 520 does, is push the date back a year. That's really all it does. The requirement's still the same. The question mark is, as it comes out of committee, and depending on how much debate it gets, what amendments or other changes will there be to 520? That's really kind of the question mark that everybody has right now, and is, if it changes more, how does that impact us? So we are kind of like, we were headed down these paths with these options, and if you have questions or comments about these options, please tonight, we really want to hear from you. Or in the next couple of weeks, we want to hear, because we want to continue to start planning this. But the question is, what will happen with LB 520 in the legislature? Will it get amended and adjusted even further? Will it, instead of being, right now it's a high school requirement, will they take that high school requirement tab off of it and just make it a broader perspective? I mean, we don't know. But
So if it doesn't go through, then we need to have this implemented for next fall, right?
correct.
Yes, and then we have to also think about how are we going to take our current eighth graders who we
Right.
haven't done anything for, and they will have to do something in high school, so then we'll have to figure that out. Mhm.
But it would only affect that class.
Yep, if we did the middle school, because then we could pick up the seventh graders and make sure that they had it. Mhm. Yep.
So what do we know about the content that's being required?
We do have standards that, as we look at the standards, they all fit within 5 realms. So computer science, computer literacy, educational technology, digital citizenship, and information technology. There is a lot there, and that is one of the things that they say right now, that there are 3 courses that meet those standards. So the foundations of computing, IT fundamentals, and then AP computer science principles are the 3 that fit. So those are the things we're looking at too, because right now our AP computer science principles, it is a great course and we offer it, but it's not a course that everyone should be taking. It's one of those things that it's a very high intense course. And so, it's one of those things, how do we make this accessible to every single child? So those are the other things that we are looking at too, because every child has to meet these graduation requirements. And so those are the things that we want to make sure of, is how do we make sure it works? How do we get a curriculum that's still rigorous, but we provide the supports so that every child can be successful?
Have
Yep.
you guys evaluated if, assuming we add this as 5 credits, is there something, we would remove? Have you thought about that from the 260? Or would we now just be up to 265 and we just keep?
We'd still keep the 260, I think. It would just be 160 credits then, of the 260 are required.
And essentially what happens is, these are the dynamics that are so frustrating, but essentially what happens is that 5 credit hour now takes away from an elective that a student has a choice to, if they don't like computers, right now they can take an elective in something else. But now that chips away at that 160 hours that the student has for choice. So that's one of the dynamics that we're looking at, and really, it's one of the reasons why we've talked heavily about doing this in the middle school, because Mr. Hoagland's developing such a robust curriculum around this particular topic that will fit right into the standards, and it would all be taken care of, so it leaves that option still open for high school students to be able to have more elective choice. It doesn't chip away at that when they're in high school. It's a good question.
So potentially, this year's 8th graders may have to do something hybrid over the next 4 years, but then if we could do it in the middle school, then obviously the 7th graders, on up.
Yes.
And then we just have to worry about the ones that, as Dr. Nielsen mentioned,
That move in.
Mhm.
or come from another district
And have it taken in.
and have it taken. So, right now, the bill, I think the biggest issue for most school districts, well, there's a lot of issues, but from our standpoint, I'll just speak for us, the biggest issue is the fact that this came on so fast, there wasn't a lot of time to plan. It was last year, bam, implement next year. So this amendment, 520, introduced by Senator Walz, is really helpful because it gives us another year to plan and really look at all the options that.
Well, they just put out the standards too. I mean, it was
Right.
late fall, wasn't it? When the-
So when do you think we'll know as far as if we're gonna get more time or if they're gonna implement it right away?
There hasn't been a hearing scheduled for this yet, so shortly after the hearing, I think and that discussion that will give us some indication. And then essentially it won't be, this is a 90-day session, so the session doesn't end till mid-May. We won't know until then what the true outcome of it is.
But potentially by the summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The other piece on AR 5205 that we are removing from the regulation is the number 3, it says assessment. We no longer require students to, with the move to ACT, we do not require every student to pass the ACT in order to graduate. So when it was NISA, there were other pieces that we could add into that, but with the ACT, it's very difficult to have the students continue to take the ACT to graduate.
Good questions. Any others?
Did I sleep through procedures during meetings?
We're not even there
No, we
yet.
aren't there yet. We're on 6212.
Oh,
Yes, sorry.
we all stopped talking, I thought it was time to move on, I thought it's too cold in here, my brain is frozen.
Okay. 6212 is about academic content standards, and one of the things that we needed to update were just adopting. We adopt the state standards when they are approved. Social studies, I know that we adopted them, I just don't think that this got updated when we did that, so we're making sure that it officially gets updated. Our math standards that were just released September 2022, we'll adopt those, and then the language arts standards were September 2021. Again, we've adopted all of those. We adopt all the state standards, the core areas, and our teachers have started already working with those pieces and getting them infused into their curriculum. Now we're on to,
Now we're on
Yes.
8345, procedures during meetings.
yes.
I can't wait.
So, policy 8345 just really deals with the Open Meetings Act and procedures during the meetings. One of the things that's been recommended by our lawyer is that, and this is across the board, in respect of the Open Meetings Act and the procedures that are in place to address you as a Board of Education, that all of that comes through that process that's established, which is filling out the card, that getting turned into the vice president or the president of the meeting, and then sitting in the chair and talking to you as a board versus electronic communications. So the statement that we would be adding is that at board meetings, board members will not communicate with any other person about school-related matters via text message, email, social media, or other electronic means. Instead, we will only discuss those matters verbally, and any person or media entity wishing to ask questions or communicate electronically with the board member during the meeting should not expect a response during that meeting. So really, it's all kind of things that have been talked about before, but it's making sure that people want to come and talk to you during the meeting, they do that from the chair, not via electronic. So we'll be asking
Unless
you.
they're telling you that you're, you know,
Not close enough.
that you're not close enough to the mic or they
Uh-huh.
can't see.
Right.
you.
Right. Okay. The next one,
Naloxone.
I'm gonna let you
Okay.
talk about that.
Naloxone is 5602, and what this is, I'm going to call what it is also known as, is Narcan. And so Narcan is a nasal spray. It's prescription medicine for the treatment of a known or suspected opioid overdose emergency with signs of breathing problems, severe sleepiness or not able to respond. So all buildings at this point in time have a dose of Narcan in each of the buildings. And we keep it in a secure location, and there are certain people that have been trained on how to administer Narcan. Officer Lauenstein brought this back and said, Jackie, I can get a dose for every building. I said, absolutely. Because here's the deal, if someone comes in contact with fentanyl or another opioid and ends up collapsing, we have something that can save their lives. And that is our goal, is to save anyone's life that we possibly can. So we have developed training with the help of Officer Lauenstein and our SROs. We have 2 videos. So there's a video of what happened to a law enforcement agent who ended up in contact with fentanyl and how this saved his life. And then there's also a how do you administer it on a dummy. And so we go through the videos, we take a quiz, and after that point in time, we are certified to give it. It's just 2 sprays, 1 spray up one side of your nose, the other, another spray up the other side. And so, again, call 911 as quickly as you possibly can, but our secretaries, our nurses, our administrators, and our SROs have all been trained in all of our buildings.
I want to pause a minute just to emphasize the importance of not just the importance of that we know that this is in place, but also the importance of it's another thing that schools are having to deal with. And when you see the video, which we debated showing, but then we just thought, no, we're not going to, but this officer literally opens a car door and there's fentanyl in the car. And he stands there for a minute, and you can see it starting to impact him, and then he just falls in. And this fentanyl-laced substance, or fentanyl, literally all he did was breathe it in, and it sent him into an overdose. And the only reason he survived that overdose was because of this Narcan. And so, sadly enough, in our schools today, this is something that we have to have on hand because of the things that kids show up with, either knowingly or unknowingly, and we have to be prepared to deal with. So this is one of the reasons that this is in place.
So the policy permits the storing, administration, and implementation. Okay, any questions about that one?
6921 deals with, this was made statute a year ago, I believe, as well. Seizure safe schools, say that 3 times real fast. Policy 6921, basically one of those policies that we are required to put into place. And all it revolves around, folks, is the fact that we know we have kids that have seizures, we have adults that we have seizures. And so anywhere in any building that there's an identified person in that building that is susceptible to seizures of any type, we're required to provide training to everybody and make sure everybody knows how to handle a seizure. And this policy outlines all of those requirements. We do have students that we, and adults as well, that we have to be prepared for. And so we have completed those, we have set up those trainings for staff. Our nurses have provided that training. They are all trained in it as well. Plans have been created for students who have these needs. And additionally, we have nurses in schools where we have seizure plans. So the good news is we're meeting all these requirements in this policy. We just need to get the policy enacted and make sure that it's ready to go. We knew this was coming our way, and so now we just need to adopt the policy. We'll be asking you to do that in the next meeting.
And the piece that you have with it is just all of our safety and security training that our staff have to do throughout the year. And so there are, at one point in time, it was just bloodborne pathogens. And then things have just continued to be added. And it tells you who is required to take it and the duration of it. And so that is what we have.
Do you also have AED training?
AED, we have CPR and AED training, and that is provided for coaches and for building crisis team, response members. Our administrators have to take it. Anyone that fits into, all of our nurses have it, of course they would have to have it, but anyone that fits into an area where they are with kids, our blast.
All after-school people have
Uh-huh. There's all our special ed, yeah, there's a lot of groups. I mean, we really should just offer it to the whole staff and, because, yeah, it almost is the whole staff that ends up having to get certified, yep.
So is the training repeated on some kind of a schedule? I'm just thinking, the instructions that come with the training, are they quickly open it up, so in a panic situation, oh, what do I do for this, what do I do for that?
For which ones, for the CPR and AED?
That's yearly.
That is every other year for us.
Every other year?
Yep.
Okay.
So, and it's one of those things that after you've had it that first year, and then you go and repeat it your third year, and then you go repeat it your fifth year, you start feeling a lot more comfortable. It's like, okay, I could do this. I don't want to ever do it, but I could do it if I was in a situation where I had to. Yeah. Yep.
Just a side note, along with these policies we're talking about that impact student safety, LB 673 is in the legislature this year as well. It revolves around school safety. And basically, the premise of that is that, of the bill, is that every school district will be required to purchase software mapping that will create data and locations of the very things that we talked about, emergency kits, AEDs, Narcan, all of those things, and be shared between schools and law enforcement, whether that be fire department or law enforcement. It is shared amongst all those folks. So what that will look like, again, as the legislative session goes on and what it ends up being at the end of the session, we'll wait and see, but that's out there.
So that Narcon thing, that's not anything like the teachers have to learn about, or they
No.
don't have to be able to be accessible to that?
We probably need to, I mean, we may expand it to them next
Okay.
year, but at this point in time, when it was, Zach came to me probably in June, July, we got it out. We said, okay, let's just start here,
Right.
and then we'll continue to build. But yeah, that, it's, especially if coaches are in, are there in the evening, and we may not have a secretary or an SRO or an administrator
Right.
there. So it wouldn't be a bad thing if everyone had that training, just to understand where they're located, and then how to administer it. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Now we're moving on to calendar options, Dr. Nielsen.
Yes. I have a bundle of information. We all like bundles.
We're all bundled up too.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so there is a lot of information here, and I will, anytime you have questions, comments, please stop me. I will stop occasionally just to make sure that we have all of the information and we're on the same page. So, we are going to start by reviewing the 23-24 calendar, which will come to the board on February 13th for your approval. So we have 2 new members to our team, and we want to ensure that everyone understands the calendar. You have my notes on the very top, and then the first calendar that you see is the 23-24 calendar. It is very similar to our current year. There was one change in November. We built in that teacher workday. When I surveyed the board on November 28th, the board members that responded told me to keep the day after Thanksgiving as a workday for staff. So what that does is that moves our student days down from 177 to 176. And there are 2 snow days built into this calendar. So if we don't use the snow days, that means that we get out on Tuesday, the 21st of May, would be our half day.
The day after Thanksgiving?
Yes, as a work day.
The Monday.
Oh, the Monday, sorry, the Monday after Thanksgiving, thank you for that correction. Yes, the Monday after Thanksgiving. And the day after Thanksgiving is a day off. Yes, so it would be November 27th. So as you can see on this calendar, we look to start on August 10th, and first semester has 86.5 days in it, second semester has 89.5 days. Any questions about the 23-24 school calendar?
I don't think so at this point. I think the only one thing that, maybe to look at past this is just see if, that from that April through May, there's no breaks, basically. I mean, April 1st, yeah, but that's,
Well, the 26th is a professional development day. That 26th ended up getting moved from February. So February 19th used to be that professional development day, but we moved that to the 26th.
and then the only other question I guess I have is just parent-teacher conferences so quickly in September. Do you ever get any feedback from teachers, parents? Is that too soon? Is that it just seems like
It's very
you just start
quickly.
school and then you start,
Comes quick.
compared to when Missy does with the preschool. A little bit later, it just seems like you have more data to provide a parent versus,
But on the other hand, when we used to do it at the end of the first 9 weeks, kids were so they were so far behind, that was really, really hard to get caught up. I think if they're struggling, then you can catch it and they can do something about it, but I agree, it's early, I mean, sometimes you hardly, but you do have some assessments that you can rely on. I would move it later.
One reason we left it later is because we do home visits at the beginning, so we get to kind of get that relationship first, so that's why there's, and our report is due at that time too.
So that is something that we can continue to explore, is when parent-teacher conferences are, and continue to, ask teachers, get more feedback about that, because that's something that absolutely we can look at. Or even going a week later, would that make a difference? So those are some things that we can absolutely look at. Okay, any other questions about this calendar? Okay, so you will see that calendar in a week and a half. Okay, so as we move on to the 2024, 2025 draft calendars, one of the things that we know is, as we have been exploring this as an administrative team, as a teacher team that has come together and looked at this piece, our goal is to continue to figure out, how do we ensure student success? And one of the ways we do that is we know that we continue teacher growth and development. So as we look at the calendar, our number one focal point we know is student success. So how do we get there? What is the best system to help our staff members develop, grow, and help them continue to move forward so that they can directly impact students at a deep level? We also know that in all professions, our employees are allowed time to collaborate, time to problem solve, time to continue to reflect upon what's happening and how do they continue to move forward. So if we need to improve product development, if we need to improve product patient success, our financial outcomes, or anything else, there is that collaboration time. And education is no different. Our teachers need collaboration time to continue to problem solve how to best support our kids. So, as we look at the documents in front of you, there's quite a few things that are there. And a lot of them just go to show you what different things are happening, what different pieces maybe other districts have in place, and what are the options that we are looking at. So to begin with, you have our issue investigations for our professional learning teams that are in front of you. So again, this hits the strategic plan, strategy 3, 4, and 5 as we look at our professional learning teams. But some of the cool things that you will see in here, you'll see the team, and then you'll see the facilitator, and you will see what they're targeting. So where did they say, oh my gosh, here's the need that we need to target this year, and here's our goal. So some of the fun things that you will see going on in our professional learning communities are multiple groups are focused on improving progress monitoring and formative assessment tools. Our 5th grade is learning about ways to increase mastery of students showing the main idea and listing supporting details. Our high school science is investigating ways to develop a student's ability to organize, analyze, and answer concluding type questions similar to those on the ACT. Our high school English is increasing MAP and ACT growth in grammar and ELA because assessment results have shown that our sophomore language arts scores were not where they needed to be. So how do we address that? What do we need to adjust? Our PE department is looking at how do we improve student health and wellness through participation. And if we can do that, we can directly impact the classroom. Our skilled technical science courses, those 2 teachers are working very diligently on how do we help students read a tape measure. Because if we are building a house, we have to be able to read a tape measure. If we can't, there's a problem with that. So there's all sorts of things happening every Wednesday afternoon. And those are the things that we just wanted to show you are just some of the highlights that our teacher teams are collaborating on and continuing to process through so that they can continue to impact student achievement and impact our students in Beatrice Public Schools. So as you look at what is on that sheet, you'll notice that there's a breadth of just a diverse number of research pieces going on in these teams. We are constantly focused on students, constantly working together to problem solve where our students are, the concerns, the academic concerns, the social emotional concerns, the behavioral concerns. How do we strategize? How do we work together to meet those pieces that arise? That is a constant discussion that's happening in our collaborative teams. Instruction in the classroom. As we look at the instruction in the classroom, again, this is a frequent piece because we know that if I have high quality instruction in my classroom, my students are going to succeed. So how do I make sure that I'm working with all the rest of my team members to make sure we have high quality instruction going on in every classroom around the district? If I'm struggling teaching a concept, how do I use my resource right next door or right across the hall or right across town to say, okay, what are you doing? Because I need help. Assessment data. Again, we are pushing our teachers to use formative assessment pieces 3 to 5 times a week. Because here's the deal, I want to know where those kids are right now with that standard. I don't want to know 5 weeks from now when you've given that unit test because that is way too late for me to do anything to help that child. That child already has those misconceptions. And curriculum, that's an occasional thing that you will hear in the learning teams. So you'll hear that maybe 5 to 7 years when our standards have been reviewed. Maybe it's when we start identifying some gaps, we'll address some of those big pieces, but that big curriculum work will be, that'll be kind of a 5 to 7 years. So those are the great things that are happening in our groups right now. The next sheet talks about feedback from 18 districts around the state that have included information about their weekly collaboration time. And some of the things that I thought were kind of eye-opening when I talked to some of the districts were just some of the changes that they made and that have actually had more favorable responses from families. Because I know that as we look at the calendars for 24-25, families are a part of the puzzle. Families are a piece of why we do this. And so we need to make sure that we can help families. We also need to make sure we can help our students be successful too. So a couple of the responses said that they moved to an AM session rather than a PM and actually saw favorable results or favorable responses from parents. Another one said that rather than an early dismissal on Wednesday, they moved to an early dismissal on Friday, and parents seemed to love that one. So I think there are some different options as we look at these calendars that we could absolutely explore. And that's the cool thing about it being a draft right now, or them all being drafts, is we have time to explore them, and we have time to get feedback, we have time to bring in other groups to continue to ask and say, okay, let's look at what's on the table to try and make sure we have the best calendar for 24, 25. Okay, any other questions about that at this point in time before we start looking at the calendars? Okay, we've had a great group of individuals, our administrators have looked at the calendars. I've had a teacher team that has come in that is comprised of specials teachers, that's comprised of our counselors, that's comprised of core teachers that are title, special ed, the mix, just because we want to make sure we have the perspective of multiple people in multiple realms. So as we looked at this, there were 5 different calendar options that we looked at. The other thing about 24-25 that we need to look at was the fact that we will have a new elementary school. So we've got to make sure that when we look at what's happening on the east side of town, that we spread things out. So you will notice that start and stop times have been thought about, and they will continue to be thought about, and things might be adjusted there. There are 5 calendars here that all have their different pros, all have their different cons. I'm going to tell you there's no calendar that I am going to offer up that is perfect. No calendar that I'm going to offer up that everyone's going to love. No calendar, and so that's the thing is, no calendar is going to meet the needs of every single person in our community, in our district. We know that. And that's why we've got to go back to the student success is what our focal point is. So how do we do that? So calendar one is a very similar calendar to calendar that we have previously seen of 23, 24. However, what we do is, because we are in one building and we don't have to allow for a lot of travel time, we would look at dismissing later. So our middle school would dismiss 15 minutes later at 2:30. Our high school would then dismiss at 2:35, and our elementary would dismiss 45 minutes later, rather than at 2 o'clock, they would dismiss at 2:45. So our teachers would then still have the PLC time from 3 to 3:45, and that would be their, or 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. That would be their, that would be the time allotted for that collaboration. So that is one of the things that we looked at. Now, you have the calendar in front of you that kind of goes through when we would start the year, goes through when we would end the year. One of the things that we have looked at also is there is a list of just different pros and cons that, as we developed with our administrators, with our teachers, these are the things that we talked about. Now, this is still a growing document. So as we continue to have discussions tonight, as we continue to have discussions throughout, March, April, May, I'll continue to add to these documents before we make, so that will hopefully help us make the best decision. So calendar one, notice that when you look down below though, you have arrival times and dismissal times for the day. So 8:10 to 3:10 would be our elementary. Preschool would be 8:20 to 3:20. Middle school would be 3:30 to 3:30, and high school would be 8:30 to 3:35. One of the things that we are switching or looking at switching, because there is brain research to show our middle school and high schoolers should be starting later than our elementary and preschool kids. Our elementary and preschool kids, their brains turn on much earlier than our middle school and high school. We also know that our high schoolers tend to be the ones that are busy. They have jobs, they stay up late studying, and so just making sure that they get ample rest and that they're ready to go for the day, that's one of the things we looked at with this calendar. And in calendar one, you have 176 student days, and staff days are 186. Okay, so moving on to calendar two. Calendar 2 is one extra half-day per month. So if you look at the calendar, you will see a red day scattered throughout. Every month would have a red half-day dismissal. This is not always the same day of the week or month. It's placed when it fits best in the calendar. So that is the half-day. The other thing that you would notice is that there are 172 student days rather than 176. Because if we wanted to keep the same number of days for students, we would then have to add 4 extra staff days. That would affect the contract, that would affect our financial obligation for our staff. So that would affect those pieces. The other thing is, if you look down, for that half-day dismissal, is you would have the half-day dismissal around the 12, 12:10, and 12:15, which is very similar to our half-day dismissals currently. And so on those half-days, we would not feed lunch to our students. And then PLC time, professional learning community time, would run from 1 to 3:45 p.m. So that is the half-day option. Moving on to calendar 3. Calendar 3 is that extra month option, and you will notice those will be the green days that you find throughout the months. Again, they are placed on the calendar when they fit best, and kind of pushed. They do extend holidays, so for families that are taking vacations, this would be nice for families that are taking those vacations. Now, one of the things to note about this, though, is those green days would be professional development days. And so if you look at the negotiated agreement, teachers have to be here on professional development days. Now, if they're sick, but if they cannot take a personal day on a professional development day. So those would be days that teachers are obligated to be in the building. Unless they had a special something that came up, a rare occurrence. Again, we would look at student days would be 172 rather than 176, and staff days would be 186. Okay, calendar 4 and calendar 5 are kind of a hybrid approach. And this is looking at 2 different options, and I know option number 5 is something that we've talked about before. Option number 4 is looking at a Wednesday PM dismissal, but it'd be the first and third Wednesdays of every month. So it would be something that would stay the same. It's the first and it's the third Wednesday of every month. You'll notice October and April have 5 days in the month. We did not put it on the 5th Wednesday. We just said first and third. So every month, it's going to be the same. Our student days would stay the same at that 176 for both of them. The difference between the 2 is calendar 4 would be a PM dismissal. Calendar 5 would be a late start option. Because I know that that is one thing that we've heard about is kind of that high school piece of finding places for students, of where do they go, especially the freshmen, after school when they have sports and then they have to come back, so parents have to find place afterwards and then they have to get them back. The other thing that I know in working with Doris, we would look at with the late starts would definitely be making sure that if we had the late start, we would have blast running in the morning on those days, and we're working with paras to make sure that we had some type of supervision, just like we currently do. Those are the 5 different calendars. They all have different, like I said, different pros and cons. One of the things to note, as I brought up blast, with calendar 2 and 3, calendars 2 and 3 might have implications on our blast funding. Because currently, we take our Wednesdays, and we get extra hours on those Wednesdays. So that could impact our blast funding. Now, we will be at one site, so that may increase our number too. We don't know. I know that Doris has done an amazing job and continued to increase the numbers of blast participants. So those are things, I think we have to look at all the pieces on the table as we look at all these different options, just to make sure that we know whatever option we choose, what different things we're going to have to, what are the pros, what are the cons, and then we can hopefully make the best option.
One teensy weensy little fix is, option 5 right
Yep.
here, on the key, it says early out, I think you want
Late start. Okay, thank you. Perfect.
So I noticed our snow days, we have 2 for the next one.
Yes, and then it went
we're
down to
dropped to
1.
1. But, so, looking ahead to the 24-25 calendar,
Yes,
the last day of school is the Friday before
I know.
Memorial Day.
Mhm.
So is it clear to everyone that if we would have to extend that year, they would have to come back after Memorial Day, and how well will that be received?
Yes. One of the things that we do have on each calendar is we do have an additional 44 instructional hours on all of these calendars. That's without that snow day. So we would have the option to say, the other thing we could do is we could look at the 21st. You know, we could talk to parents and say, the 21st, that is that Easter Monday, we need to come back. We could look, hopefully by that time, we may be able to say that 13th of March, we need to go to school those days. So there are, I think, options we would have now. We also know that there's March snowstorms that can happen. So, there are some pieces that, yeah, we've looked at. As I looked at this
I mean,
calendar,
if we have a half day on the 21st in May of 25, and then we come back for a whole day, and then we have a half day, that seems just a little
yeah, with that,
ridiculous to me.
yes, with the, so that,
You know, if we were
Yeah.
gonna go to calendar 1, we have
yes,
a half day on the 21st, we
Yeah.
come back for a whole day.
and
then
then come
we have
back
a
for a
half
half day.
I mean, wouldn't it just be, let's call it the 21st, we're done, and then build in
The snow days and be done.
so that they're done by Memorial Day? I wouldn't wanna come back for a day or 2 after Memorial Day,
No.
I'll be
But
honest.
here's the thing, the one day is built in, so if we don't use it, we'd be off the 22nd.
Right,
So now,
how many times have we only taken one snow day?
I know. Well, we're hoping this year it's just one.
Last
We're
year we
hoping.
didn't have any,
Woohoo! I like
but you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You just never know.
It's the exception rather than the rule.
Right,
Yes.
it is. You're exactly right.
That's where that 44 instructional hours, I think that is huge. I mean, they have at least 44 instructional hours, so that is nice to know that we are over. And if we would have a major, I mean, we'd have to have a major snowstorm that would come
We've
into
been
play
closed
too.
for other reasons though too, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, flooding.
Flood days.
You know, I mean, that type of thing, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want us to just think strictly snow days, I mean, if there would be a tornado or, you know, something
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, wind, last year we had a wind, I mean, it wasn't a full day, but we
Yeah.
had
Right.
Go wind day,
a
yeah.
wind day, which, who's that?
Their Central this year was
Wow.
closed
Yeah.
for a
Right.
few days while they did some investigating.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely, there's always there's so many different things that, yeah. And I know that we could write a waiver to the state if something major happened, however, I would prefer not to. And that's where I think we could look at those other days and say, here are the other options, is we come on the 13th, we come on the 21st, and I know that that is not popular, but it is an option,
I think it would be, I mean, I would rather do that, like, than come back
yeah.
that much later in May, but that would just be me.
It's a lot to think about. There's a lot of options when we make that transition into the one building site. It helps us in a lot of ways, but it also creates a lot of thought about start and stop of the actual day, every day, and then also how we make changes within the calendar related to the week and the month. So, a lot to think about, a lot of options here. I appreciate the work that you put in on this, trying to come up with a solution that, as you said, fits everybody. Because at the end of the day, calendar 1 works for some people, but it doesn't work for others, and calendar 5 works for some people, and it doesn't work for others. And so what we have to do is figure out which one of these options, as we continue these discussions, you're probably gonna get tired of talking about calendars, but which one of these options is the one that fits the best? And we want to move forward with it. So these are ideas that have been created, discussed, wanted to put them in front of you with an opportunity to ask questions and review them. We're available to do that.
I think it's important that when we look at these calendars, that we differentiate between PLC time, which needs to meet more often so teachers can connect with each other, and professional development, which is often they're being talked to. Not always, but oftentimes it's presentations of some kind. And so I think that's important enough. I'd like to see us at least try the AM late start, just to see how that's good. I also think if you think about, you're a little more awake and excited about the day, and I think from talking to teachers at other schools, I think it's been effective, so I think that would be something I'd like to at least see the district try.
One of the other ones that I tried, and I started and then I had to stop because I did not know how to get it done, the 4-day week. That was another option that I'm like, okay, well, could we explore it? And it was like, okay, well, how long do we need to go? Do we need to go 9 hours, 10 hours with kids? And yeah, it was one of those things, I'm like,
Somebody's doing, Weeping Water's doing it.
I know, they are, and I could take their calendar, but then how do we get the 186 days? And it was a lot more than my brain really wanted to do at that point in time. So that is another option. I'm more than willing to continue to explore that if the board thinks that that is something that we'd like to explore. I'm more than willing to look at that, but yeah, it was a challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is initiative 433, Mr. Alexander.
So, in alignment with strategic goal number 3, recruiting, hiring and retaining high-quality staff, we're wanting to update you on a few options. Again, this is an update provided to you on a few options we're looking at in regard to that particular strategy. Knowing that they may also change as we continue to review and analyze them. So I put together a packet of information for you, and in working with Jackie Bornemeyer on these things. And this is more data than it is anything that I want to give to you tonight, walk you through it very basically, and then we can continue to discuss as needed or as you'd like. Page 1 of your packet basically breaks out our classified staff into their categories. So you can see each one and how many staff members are in each one of those categories. School year positions, that means 9-month hourly staff members. There's 137 of those, and they fall into those categories listed. Then there's 12-month positions. These are folks that work 12 months in hourly positions, and then there's other contracted. So these are folks that have contracts that are 12 months and have different responsibilities. So the point of this first page is getting you familiar with how many numbers there are, how many people there are in each category, and understanding that with each category comes a different set of pay and benefits. And so that's what page 1 is all about. The next page, page 2, is for your understanding, just like our teacher's salary schedule, we have an hourly classified staff schedule. And their pay schedule fluctuates depending on a couple different things. 1, what position they're in. 2, where that starts. 3, where it ends for them or where they max out. And then 4, where they fall into that on the salary schedule. So those are the 22-23 hourly pay schedules that we operate off of right now. So you can look and see what those categories are. Now, what we're looking at for coming years is changing this salary schedule up a little bit. And a lot of that is because of the next page, Initiative 433, which was passed by the state of Nebraska in November. The voters have voted in a minimum wage hike. And you can see at the top of that page how that fits. So the current minimum hourly rate in the state of Nebraska is $9 per hour. By January 1, 2023, we had to be at $10.50. We have nobody that's paid at $10.50. Our starting point is $13.41, okay? So we are fine in terms of meeting Initiative 433 all the way up to January 1 of 2025, which then it's required to be $13.50 an hour. And then you can see in January 1, 2026 is $15 an hour. Now, with saying that, it's also, I want you to know that schools are exempt from Initiative 433. So you don't have to meet this initiative. What it comes down to, though, is being competitive in the market with everyone around you that's going to be paying, that is required to pay those salaries. Okay? So you can see down below the number of employed positions below $15 per hour that we have in each category. And those are in red. And that's just data for you. So we have 82 employees that are below that $15 per hour right now, as we speak. Page 4, basically, this is the beginning workings of some suggestions and ideas and options that we're looking at to adjust this. So on the left-hand side, you see the categories that people fall into when they're hired, and then you see their pay step minimum that's current and their pay step maximum. What we've talked about doing is making changes to that classified salary schedule. And an example would be addressing the 82 positions by increasing that minimum step where they enter. So that's one option we have. It probably makes the most sense. So instead of starting on a library media para, instead of starting on step 4 or step 5, would move to step 6. That would automatically increase that minimum wage which they start at. So that's a very easy adjustment to make. And those are things that fit the salary schedule and make then the salary schedule easy to advance that way. And then on the other end of it, we can also increase the maximum step if we want to. So those are things that we're working on right now, back and forth. The other thing you could do is just consider a minimum wage increase of 10 cents across the board for everybody. You could look at a 10 to 15 cent per hour raise that would impact all 137 employees. You could look at a 10 cent that impacts the 82. So there's multiple options. When we were talking about this, we were talking about if we had to meet Initiative 433 right now, what options would we have? 10 cents would automatically increase those 82 employees that are below that concern level that we have. It would give those 82 employees a 10 cent raise. Then we looked at what if we want to do something for all 137 right now? What's feasible and how much would that cost? So both of those options would have an impact on the budget immediately if we did it right now. Okay, so typically we don't look at doing these types of things until May, June for the next year. And we're just trying to brainstorm ahead of time and ask, do we want to do something in the middle of the year, or do we want to wait till the end of the year? And if we do wait till the end of the year, what are some options that we have to address the salary schedule that will help us meet Initiative 433 in the coming years? Okay. The last thing that we talked about is utilizing an incentive pay option for consideration where we would give a stipend to 9 and 10-month school year hourly employees, because typically, these are the employees that, because they work 9 or 10 months, they're part-time employees, they don't have as many benefits. And so we talked about, do we want to use some of our ESSERS funding to incentivize them? And that's an option as well. The question is, do you want to do that in the middle of the year, or do you want to look at having that discussion for the future as well? And so that's something that we consider. If you do go that way, and I'm visiting with school attorney tomorrow, one of the things we have to do, which leads me to the last page of this document, page 6, is we will have to adopt a policy that addresses using your ESSERS funds for a one-time stipend. And we're gonna have to talk about this, adopting this policy anyway, if we wanna use ESSERS funds to do that with any of our staff. It's probably a good thing to have in place. It's required by the federal guidelines of use of the ESSERS funds. So, questions?
Well, I will say I'm not in favor of changing a budget in the middle of the year. I just don't think that's a good precedent to set. I'm also uncomfortable doing the stipend because you're using funds that are not going to be there year after year. And it's kind of one of those things, once you start it, it becomes an expectation. Well, you did it that year, are you going to do it again this year? Then we also have a lot of certified staff, administrators, all our staff. I don't know how you choose one segment of your staff and say you get the bonus or the stipend, but you don't give it to the other people. So I'm not real comfortable with that, but a lot of it is, also the ESSERS funding is going away and we don't have funding to continue to do something like that, so I don't like setting that precedence.
I would say,
Go ahead.
somewhat agree with Janet as far as not changing in the middle of the budget year, but I think we also have to be considerate of what the current market is and what, what we're facing as far as just labor shortages and, what's out there, what our openings, our ability to recruit. And, we go through the same thing where I work, and it's, you look at, are you able to bring in somebody at these lower rates when, quite honestly, they can go to fast food and make $5 more an hour on top of that, or, other positions, so. That's where I think the biggest thing is just making sure that we're able to fill positions when we're paying at a significantly lower rate than other like-type positions in the community.
Well, and I do think that we have to look at it. I agree with you. But you started to look at it last year already, and you made some movement with staff. And if I recall, that was like a 6.67% increase that they received, but our certified staff and our administrators did not get a 6.67% increase. And I understand the difference in benefits but their positions are different too. So, I still think that we have to be fair with all employees across the board, not just classified staff. I definitely think that those beginning wages need to be increased. And we do ask our paras and a lot of people to do things that other districts don't have theirs, that their paras do.
So how did you come to the $300? Is there so much in the budget for that ESSERS funds, or could it possibly be more than $300?
That's a great question, and really it was looking at what portion of the ESSERS funds we wanted to commit to it, and that came up to about $40,000 for that chunk.
So while we might be exempt from Initiative 433, it's still our intention to get to $15 an hour, I assume. I mean, how do we, like Eric said, how do we be competitive in the hiring market if we're not paying what they're paying at the local fast food restaurant?
Yeah.
And yet we have, we're placing a lot of demands and expectations on these people.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think although we're exempt from it, and we talked about this with some of our unicameral representatives, state senators, but think you're right. If we don't try and get to that initiative 433 at the same time everybody else is, it's gonna be even harder than it is right now.
So,
Who else is exempt?
Um, That's a great question. I'm not exactly sure.
so, you know, the state took, it's increasing by $6 over the course of, you know, the next few years. So they divided that by 4 years, they come up with $1.50 every year. So if we would take our, you know, I mean, minimums or, you know, could we do the same thing and increase it so that we know what we're planning on each year, you know, for that increase on the budget? I don't like changing a budget that we voted on and approved either midway. And I'm not a fan of the stipend. I would rather give it to them on their take-home, you know, monthly or bi-weekly pay. I don't know if the pairs get paid, you know, monthly as well, but I'd rather give it to them every paycheck rather than get that one lump sum where you're taking, we all know how that works. You get taxes and taking everything out of it, and you go home with virtually nothing anyway.
Yep. And
So-
you're right, and there are districts that did that and had that exact thing
Right.
happen.
And I agree with Lisa, I would rather see it in your wages rather than in a stipend.
It was just food for thought.
Well, I appreciate the comments, because these are the things that we're wrestling with as this initiative has been voted in, and they're the things that we're taking into consideration as we try and get up to where we wanna be. We've been fortunate, ironically, just a tidbit of info here, ironically, the positions in our district that come with full benefits have actually been the hardest ones to hire. And that is in the maintenance department. We're almost full of paraeducators now. So since Christmas, we've seen a huge influx of applications, not huge, but we've seen an influx of applications come in, and we've been able to hire almost all of our paraeducator positions, I think with the exception of a few. So that's been good. That's,
Nutrition services is the other place where we're struggling as well.
yeah, nutrition services is, we've had a couple that have had to retire, and so we're down in that department as well. So if you know anybody who's interested in a
Driving
good
bus
position.
and cooking.
Yeah, driving a bus, cooking.
We'll take them.
He was such a great one.
Well, yeah, it would be kind of like that. What's that? There, and around that bus and everything.
The demolition.
Yes, yes, it would be more like that.
Sign her up.
All right.
Well, now we have the proper time for public questions and comments on any topic, and we do have a speaker this evening. Mr. Alexander would like to speak to us about fundraising efforts and the legislative update.
We're gonna do fundraising first.
We are gonna do fundraising first, and honestly, I think probably what I wanna communicate with you legislatively, I'll just do that through email, okay? Just because it's been a long night, your patience is very appreciated. But this particular topic, we do wanna make you aware of, because it is becoming more of a topic community-wise. And we want to take just a few minutes and explain to you what's been done, where we're headed, and why. So, basically, as you all know, in the PK5 elementary project, we've committed $40 million to building the building. Okay, $35 million of it on loan, and roughly between $4 and $5 million of school money to get the building constructed. Now, the thing that comes along with the building is also called soft costs. So the $40 million fits into the hard cost category. On top of that $40 million, there are also soft costs related. And so we're working through that in a myriad of different ways, but one of the ways is we've asked our parent-teacher organizations to help us do a fundraising project to target about $1 to $1.5 million in that category. If it's more than that, great, but $1 million would be awesome to help go towards soft costs. So then the question becomes, what are soft costs? And what does it all entail? Because the first thing, the easiest thing to describe that is how it was described to us from architects, is what you call FF&E, or furniture, fixtures, and equipment, but that's not very descriptive. So we've tried to come up with a list of things that talks more about what FF&E entails. So you can see that, and we've talked to furniture providers, we've talked to technology providers about what that all means and what the costs are associated. So an example would be a gym sound system equipment is an example of a soft cost that you incur when you build a new building. So, you know, you're talking about a $40,000 sound system equipment. A gym curtain divider. So on one side of the gym, we have a PE class going on, the curtain divider's in the middle. On the other side, we have a class going on. A projector in the gym. The list goes on and on and on, and I'm not gonna go through each one of these things, but everything from those types of items up to band equipment, for band equipment stands, chairs, art room tables, chairs, because we have an art room table that we've never had before, a kiln, drying racks, supplies, all the things that come with that are also included. Computer hardware and software, playground equipment. This is a big, this question could be asked by our community. Why are we raising money for playground equipment when we already have playground equipment? Well, that playground equipment is in 3 different locations and serves different groups of kids, 4 different locations. So we're gonna be able to move some of that? Yes, we are. But we also have to think about surfaces underneath that playground equipment. So playground equipment doesn't necessarily mean the things that the kids are crawling on or swinging on or teeter-tottering on. It also means the surfaces underneath that have to meet ADA compliance. So this list it's live, it's not complete. There will be more things that are added to it. We're also talking about things that we have pulled out of the gross maximum price of the building or the construction documents of the building, and we've put on here that say we will provide those owner provided, because the reality is when we do that, we save money because there's not a percentage tacked on by the construction company when we do it. So we're taking on some of these things that we can go out to bid on and save money on if we handle it versus the construction company. So there's a lot of things. Security cameras, we can do that with the help of the issue 5. E-rate cabling, we've already paid for some of these projects and gotten reimbursed through E-rate. So, but there's still some costs, a lot of costs that are gonna be incurred. Floor scrubbers. Right now, we don't have those in our elementary. And we're gonna have a 143,000 square foot building that has a massive hallway on 2 levels that has to be scrubbed, along with a kitchen space. So the other one that I think is important to note is when people are asking questions, what are we donating this money for, or what's this going towards? All of these things, but we also know that we'll have a brand new nurse's office, and you know, service tables, showers, all kinds of things will have needs related to those things. So lunchroom tables, we are ordering 20 lunchroom tables with 12 stools at each table, and we'll order another set of 20 with 8 stools per table. So at some tables you'll have 8 students sitting at some tables you'll have 12 students sitting at. But essentially, 305 students in the lunchroom at a time. So we have to have enough cafeteria tables to feed that many kids at one time. Okay, so those are all examples of some of the things that we are saying we're going to try and raise money to pay for. Classroom costs, we went to a furniture company and just said, what are some of the classroom costs that we can count on? What's a typical classroom cost? So each classroom, each kindergarten classroom is estimated to be at $9,961 worth of furnishings to go into that classroom. So each one of these numbers you can multiply by 6. So the average elementary classroom comes to about $13,654 of supplies to go into that classroom. Will we take some of the materials that we currently have in our buildings? The answer to that question is yes. But not all of it. And part of the reason is that in some of our minds, we still assimilate education as being rows of desks and chairs. And the fact of the matter is, education has changed extensively. And now we have collaborative workspaces where kids are working on things collaboratively. And that's a change in what we've utilized in the past. So education has changed since 1970 when we put that equipment in there, or 1950 when we put that equipment in the buildings. We need to change with it in order to provide the best education opportunity we can for kids. So this list is available. I will tell you that it changes. It will continue to evolve. But we've asked a group of people to help us fundraise for these soft cost items. And primarily, that gets back to our parent-teacher organizations. We've asked our elementary principals to help organize their parent-teacher organizations, bring them all together as one, because their kids will be all together as one in this building, and help us attain this goal for this equipment. And I've asked Missy to come tonight, because she's our lead point person for the school, who can tell you kind of where that process is right now and what's being done. And the foundation has agreed to help be the funnel, where that money goes and how it gets divvied out when our vendors send us invoices for that. So, and the reason for that is because it's a 501c3 organization, tax deductible. It helps the people making the donations, and it helps us in terms of a budget. So that's why the foundation, we've asked them to help.
I'm gonna go super quick, because I know you guys are all like, okay, I'm hungry or I need to go, so I get it. We are super excited to do this project. We have an amazing group of people that have volunteered to be part of the capital campaign. We had our first meeting and people came with ideas and we're ready and fired up to go. Would you agree, Doris? Like, they are ready to run. Some of the first things that they said is, number one, we need a purpose. So we need to have a common thread of why are we raising these funds? Fact is, when we started this process, we said this new school is a tool. We have to learn how to work with the tool. Well, we have a new set of tools here, so you can't bring old tools into a new tool belt to create new learning opportunities. Could we bring our old stuff into a new school? Absolutely we could. Would it defeat the purpose of having a new school and a new instructional place for students and teachers? Yes, it would. So we want to have a common theme and a common blurb that everybody, that group that's raising funds, you guys, teachers, administrators, when people say why, we all have the same answer. So we've only met once, we're meeting again next week, and that's a part of the answers that we're going to do is, why are we raising money? I mean, can't you use the old desks and the old tables? Well, sure, but these are the things that we want to do to have this awesome environment for our kids to learn and grow. So that's definitely coming. We're gonna form that together. The big committee is gonna break up into littler committees and then get more people on those committees in order to raise funds. Kind of a business group and a normal people group, because there's different kinds of fundings for that as well. Sorry, I didn't know what to say.
I'm looking for the message.
I am too. But part of that is, how are we going to honor those sponsors with money? Are we gonna do something outside? Are we gonna do something inside? Are we gonna do, I really want a video wall that people can touch it, but I don't know that people love that idea. So it's really not, we were very open to these parents to say, this is yours. We're not, as a school district, saying how to raise money. We're here to help you and support you. Run with it. And they really are doing an awesome job. So that will come back to you guys soon with kind of the canned response that we're gonna say of why we're raising money, and go from there and how we're going to do that. Is that good? Is that
That's
what
good.
you're looking for?
I'd like to say a few words.
Sure.
Well, and I'm speaking not as a member of the board, but as the director of the Educational Foundation. I think I'd like to point out that historically, the foundation has been a part of fundraising efforts in the past. And I look back to House of Orange, we didn't want to build just a plain Jane, let's don't have any frills, let's make this the most basic football field we can. I mean, I just didn't see that as our vision when Lisa and I were on the board and we voted on it. I saw that vision as, let's make this the best we can. And I think that's the goal that I hear from these parents with this building is let's make it the very best environment for learning. The other thing is, as to the furniture question, the foundation yearly gives out grants to teachers, and we get grant request after grant request for specialized kinds of furniture to help students learn. So I don't want people to think we're gonna go out and buy a chair that just is a little bit different color than the chair we bought like 3 years ago because it matches the walls better. I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing. We're gonna go out and make sure that classroom fits today's learning style where there's a lot more movement, it's easier to move. We have children who don't, it's difficult for them to sit for extended periods of time, and there's furniture that helps them so they can be successful at school. I think all those things play into it, but I think the foundation is eager to help in whatever way we can, and that's been our mission from the beginning with the Have a Loan Center, the House of Orange. So, yeah, I think this group of parents is very excited, and hopefully we can find some other people in the community that are equally excited about a great new elementary building, preschool.
So when people ask, our canned answer is coming, but it's new things for, you know, our new tool to help teachers and students be successful.
It's like dressing it up in new clothes.
Yeah, or clothes for the times, yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I guess I got one thing that, I'm on board with all this all sounds great, but, so, I mean, we still have 5 elementary schools that are full with cupboards, kitchen equipment, tables, whatever. Is there any way we could potentially try and sell that stuff and make money to put towards this? Or, I mean, what are we gonna do with all that stuff, I guess? Is it all just gonna go in a dumpster, or?
I think people will use it. We have sales at the school.
Yeah, great question,
I
and,
mean, is it a
And a lot, and
auction-
some of it
auction box?
Yeah.
needs to go to the
Something.
trash.
yeah,
Because I just don't wanna see that go to waste, I think.
Right.
yeah.
We could sell a lot of that and put it towards this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a great question, BJ, and what happens a lot of times with schools that go through these processes is the first thing they'll do, by statute, anything that you sell that's been purchased with public funds has to be, the public has to have an opportunity to buy that back. So the auction would be the primary way to do that. The other way to do that is put it up for sale to other schools that may be looking for some of those things, so we'll utilize both of those things. And then the last thing that could be done is, this is what we have, come and make us an offer. And, which is very similar to an auction, but you know, you put it out there on Facebook and people can then, as long as everybody has an opportunity, the public has an opportunity to buy it, then we can go that way.
Yep.
That's the stage.
And I think an example is the preschool staff has just really, with the cooperation of Head Start, redone all of the classrooms. And so they have said, we're taking our stuff, we don't need to spend a ton of money on those classrooms. So I think honoring that and looking at teachers and say, what do you want? You know, what is good?
Right.
But some teachers are phenomenal reusers, or they see a vision in something and reuse it just because it's there and it's not a lot of money. But to have new stuff, I don't know, you guys are back there, to have new stuff that isn't falling apart and like can be mobile is not only nice for them, but it also gives you pride in what you're doing in the new spot. So this is a gift as much to our community as to our teachers, for them to continue to grow as well. But yes, there's a lot of stuff in this one.
There is, and, I mean,
And in
it
storage
could be
closets.
beneficial to putting towards.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
If businesses and individuals who would purchase these things on auction or whatever, can we have something like little plaques that go on each piece so they can have it in their store and actually says something about,
That's something that we could
instead of buying bricks, it's,
bring up to the committee. That's a great idea, yeah. And one thing that the committee did say is we don't want the new school to be like a tag sale. So how can we do that and honor them in things in the school, so it's a one central location, and then have the big items be noted, but also, it was brought up at the meeting, some people want to give and don't want anything in honor of them, so could we have a nice place where we can honor those people in one, maybe not, ooh, big thing, but a place that they are honored in the school as well. But I like the reverse too. Yeah, so this group, great ideas, and I'll bring them back to that group. Let's stay a little bit longer. Who else would like to?
Hey, progress takes time.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And if you're gonna say no, just no. This meeting is adjourned.
Then you stay, I'm going.
I still have 15 minutes.